Welcome back to the Rugby Rundown every Tuesday with Jan de Koning. And I was sort of planning in my head to do a live review again after the Springbok team announcement, which would have been on a Tuesday, but as luck would have it, and no surprises, Rassie moved it to Monday. So here we are early on a Tuesday morning, the recording at our leisure. Welcome back, Jan.
Thank you, MV. No, it's a pleasure. Rassie never fails to entertain us. Let's say, put it that way. It's not the first time he's moved his team announcement to a Monday, or because they have in the team internally, they announce the team on a Sunday night. So these guys, and last week he already said the players know which game they're going to play in. So Manie knew he was going to play this week, and then we'll get to the individuals. And Pollard knows he's playing next week, and blah blah blah. So Rassie is, to him, it's neither here nor there. I know a lot of people think, oh yeah, he's doing funny things again. No, that's Rassie. He's just that he's planned ahead. And I said to somebody other, and we can talk about that a bit later, as people sometimes miss the big picture. Rassie is planning way ahead. He's planning to the World Cup next year. He's looking towards the All Blacks. He's busy, everything, all his selections in the Nations Championship, all of that is towards the greatest rivalry and the year end and the World Cup. So, yeah, whether they announce it on a Monday afternoon or a Saturday morning is all the same. Everybody in the team that needs to know by a Sunday night.
Yeah, like you said, there's a big picture, and we're all aware of the big picture. Last night I was taken on or scolded for not seeing the big picture that Rassie is painting, like I'm stupid or something. But anyway,
yeah,
what do I know? So no, I do think that caught me out a bit, as I was planning to go to Joburg today, which in hindsight might not have been maybe not a bad thing, because I'm not sure if I would have been able to get to Joburg. I'm not sure what the situation is on the highways at the moment, but yeah, you never know. Rassie says he didn't want to scoop Steve Borthwick's team announcement again, like he apparently did some time before. Just refresh my memory. Can you remember what that was about?
Yeah, he predicted the team announcement that Steve Borthwick would do, and I think he was out by 2 players only.
Oh yeah, I remember now.
Yeah. Yeah, Rassie has a habit of doing that, but that's Rassie. I mean, you can either take him serious. It's like everybody that wants to take Eddie Jones serious. Eddie Jones plays the game. And Steve Borthwick, perhaps, and the English, with their lack of humor, don't always see the funny side of Rassie's chirps and comments. So, they take him too serious, and they pay the price for it.
Yeah. All right, but let's look at the team then. Big thing for me, Damian Willemse and Cheslin Kolbe both getting their 50th Test caps. I mean, that's quite a bit of a milestone. But I mean, those players were certain choices. Anything that stands out for you in the starting 15? Anything that caught your eye? That maybe that's a little bit unexpected or a little unusual or something? To me, it looks like a pretty settled team.
Yeah. I think the surprises are more on the bench. Look, it's given the injury situation, we expected Ruan Eamon to start. That's a given. It's a very settled team and a very experienced team. I mean, you spoke about Damian and Cheslin. This team could well, maybe 1 or 2 changes, could well be the starting 15 in a World Cup final tomorrow. If the World Cup final was tomorrow, the starting 15 wouldn't look much different like from this one. Yeah, I know people will ask about Handré Pollard. People will ask about maybe another tight head prop, or but I think the Carlos Sari or Rassie addressed the tight head prop situation as well. That is why Rassie, Zach Porton is on the bench and not Wilco Louw, because Wilco has played a lot of rugby, and he's also had, as we all know, he's also had a family situation, bereavement in the family. So Rassie is slowly working with him, getting him up to speed. And Zach Porton Rassie feels it's going to be a fast game. He expects England to run at us. I'm not sure if England has got but they've selected a youngish team, if you want to call it, or a more youthful team than they would. There's no Maro Itoje, so I think they're a bit more mobile. So Zach Porton is definitely a young player that's worth looking out to. I think that's the long and short of it. I think that's the only surprises I see. On the bench, you can look at Thomas du Toit. Yes, I mean he's cemented his place now as a starting tight head, and I think we know if anything happens, he can go to Lucette as well if he needs to. yeah, but we can go through every player. Manie Libbok, I've touched on briefly, but let's touch on that. Manie Libbok, if we want to play a running game, it's Ellis Park, and we know what happened. And Manie had a bit of a meltdown at Ellis Park against Australia last year. It wasn't his best performance, so everybody will now say, okay, why Manie Libbok? Because Andre Pollard played for the Bulls, and he hasn't been with the Springbok team for so long. That's one of the explanations, and it's a valid explanation. Manie Libbok's been with the team a week longer. He's more settled. Plus, Rassie clearly wants to play a specific game at Ellis Park. So he might say that England's a more mobile team, but he'll certainly test them with Manie's type of game. So I expect a very exciting game with Manie, and I don't think there's anything wrong with Manie. I haven't seen many of his Japan games, but apparently he's a more mature player, and that happens with players. I mean, we've seen so many players. We've seen a Percy Montgomery coming back and being a superstar after being a couple of years out of the country. Sometimes it's just that change of environment, not directly competing with Sasha for the starting place at the Stormers and getting a bit of his own time and clearing his mind. So some players do that, so let's hope for Manie's sake that he makes amends for what happened last year.
Yeah, well, Manie, I think it's the obvious choice. I just heard some stats from his Japan place kicking. It's not that great, but I mean, still, I think it was 78%. It's more or less right there. Andre Pollard, I'm not sure where he was, but it wasn't far off from that. So I'm quite happy with that. My biggest concern was, and the English press is running with this, the fact that this team is old and slow. And you just mentioned that England's supposed to, expected to be running at us and everything else. Is it true to say that this team is old and slow? I mean, any team with Cheslin Kolbe, Kurtley Arends, Jesse Kriel and the likes, I don't think they're particularly slow. Manie Libbok himself is no slouch. Or is that just a bit of more mind games?
I wouldn't take anything serious said by the Fleet Street mob. Seriously. They like angles. They like, they will hang on an angle, an agenda, because it suits them better. You must remember those guys. It's like Australia, where the rugby union journalists compete with league and all sorts of other sports. I mean, they're sitting so far down the pecking order. So if you want to get onto the back page, let alone the front page, you want to get into the back page, you got to stir. So what do? You start throwing wild things like that, old and slow. Well, we'll see Saturday how old and slow they are and how old and slow we are. So I don't think it's old and slow. It's a very settled, mature team, and a team that won't panic. That's a start. And I think they might be in for a surprise. Remember, they haven't got Maro Itoje. I don't think the locks that are starting or will start will necessarily be much worse than Maro Itoje. But I think in reality, I would still make the Springboks favourites. Maybe it's going to be a tighter game than we think, but I can't see us England running us off our feet.
Yeah, I'm interested in the bench because number one, there's no lock cover. Number two, there's no 10 cover. But there's a lot of players that can play basically anywhere. Let's start with Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Yesterday, I spoke to our friend Arie Hougaard, and we speculated about he may be potentially jumping, starting at 4 lock or coming on as a 4 lock because he played 4 lock at school. And Rassie specifically mentioned that last week in the press conference. Now, you always know when Rassie says something, he plants a seed, and I'm wondering. And then also, obviously, Andre Esterhuis and Bobo, we all know he can play flank as well. But Marco van Staden can play hooker. Jan-Hendrik is supposedly the reserve hooker, but he hasn't played much hooker for the entire season. There's so many permutations. Cameron Hannekom, I spoke to him last Friday at Loftus. He was doing some extra work after he came back from the Springboks camp. And asked him, what do you prefer? We've always speculated maybe potentially being a 6, an open side in South Africa. And he says he doesn't mind. He wants to play anywhere he can as long as he can play. And I asked him what's the difference. He says the Springboks have a slightly different approach to where 8 plays and where 2 is, for example, the Bulls. The Springboks, the Bulls, the number 8 plays, down the middle, and at the Bulls, the 8 might play, more towards the edges. And the Springbok side, it's the other way around. Sia and Peter Steff will play on the edges. He doesn't mind, and I asked him if he thinks he's going to play, and he sort of, I don't know, maybe I think so, but I mean clearly he knew. So that's quite interesting. What do you think of that Bensko position? What surprises do you think we can see jumping out there?
Okay, so here's the thing. Yes, there's no specialist lock on the bench, but Rassie made it clear after last week's teaser that he threw out there about Jan Hendrik playing at lock, and he did play at lock and number 8 at school. I mean, he played everywhere at school, everywhere in the forwards and in event. Pieter-Steph will move to lock because that's why there's so much loose forward cover on the bench. So if anything happens, Pieter-Steph will go to lock. If Pieter-Steph is injured, who knows? And again, Rassie with Cameron can probably perhaps slot in at lock, or it's very difficult. But I think at this stage, Pieter-Steph is the designated person or player to move to lock. And then if anything happens, Jan Hendrik must go, or Marco van Staden must go to hooker. You still got Andre Esterhuizen that can play on the flank. So the general the bench. I mean, is half that bench can play in 2 or 3 positions. So that utility and as Rassie's hand, that's the way he plays. So in the middle of the game, if anything goes wrong, he's got cover. He's got a plan. So I know we joked before the time about people saying you must see the bigger picture. I think this is a selection where you actually do need to look at the bigger picture, not necessarily in a negative way, but Rassie is busy with a plan. And I think we'll see a slightly different Springbok game plan. We're not going to try and bully England into submission. They can call us old and slow for as much as they like. I think Rassie's got a few surprises up his sleeve for them.
Yeah. The one standout for me on the bench is Canan Moodie. Canan had a shocker in the URC final. I think there was 22 turnovers, 8 of which was his, that he conceded. He had a battle in the air, he had a yellow card, and he just was nowhere. And if you're in a defensive system, your number 13 is typically your vital cog almost, I suppose, most defensive systems. I wonder what the plan is there. Is he going to be played on wing? He's very good in the air. He's probably one of the best players in the air. At wing, he's quite tall and everything else. And is it a bit of a vote of confidence in Canan, or is it a bit of a flex to say that they can do better with him as a player? What's the thinking there, do you think?
Yeah, so let's look at a possible scenario, a hypothetical possible scenario. So Manie Libbok gets injured. What happens? Well, Damian Willemse will go to fly-off. That's confirmed. Cheslin Kolbe will go to fullback, and Canan will go into the wing. We know that Andre Esterhuizen can play from 11 onwards anywhere in the back line. He hasn't played much fullback, but we've got cover there. Jesse Kriel can play on a wing. So, and then obviously Andre can. So I think that's how it will work. So I don't see Canan anywhere outside of wing. I see him just as a wing. I mean, Kobus Reinach can play wing if needs be. He's fast enough. Scrum off. I'm not sure how Kobus is at fly-off, but Damian Willemse is designated fly-off to take over from Manie. And Andre Esterhuizen is somewhere in the midfield or in the loose forwards.
Yeah. What about Jesse moving to wing, like you just said, and Canan coming on at 13, which is his preferred position? Maybe see how that goes.
Yeah, if a player like Canan is perhaps lacking confidence, as he seemingly is, and as the final suggests, then you won't start him there. So I would still think that he would be a wing option. You can move the rest of the back line around. 13 with Jesse on the wing is a possibility. To me, it's unlikely because Rassie won't put somebody. Unless he's been working with him and he's been working with his mind and he's sorted himself out, and get his confidence back, I would rather see him play that role in like Wales, playing 13 against Wales rather than England, which is going to be a much tighter game than the Wales game. So yeah, I mean, we saw we put 80 points past that Barbas team, and Wales barely beat them with a late conversion, with a late kick. So it was a sneaker. So I don't think this Wales team is very strong or much any stronger than they were last year. So, we definitely will start as favourites, and then you can play around. And Rassie is going to play around. Make no mistake. His selection from game to game in the next 3 weeks is going to differ significantly. We should not be surprised if Rassie makes 10 or 11 changes per game.
just the one thing about the Bulls, like Andre Pollard not being picked and Volkulo not being picked for, because they played in the URC final just the other day and haven't spent as much time with the team. But all the other Bulls that have been selected have also not spent that much time, and they also played in the final. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about Volku
Well,
specifically. Volku is a specific instance. I'm not talking about him, but Pollard, for
yeah.
example, that. And I'm not saying that they should pick Pollard ahead of Lubbock's. Not what I'm saying. Lubbock is the right choice for this game. Make no mistake. But I don't think the argument about Pollard not this and that that doesn't really hold water for me. I think that Pollard needs to build up his confidence again because he also had a bit of a shocker towards the end of the URC season.
Yeah, I think that's the last bit is probably closer to the reality. Pollard did struggle after his struggles with the goal kicking. That seemed to get into his head a bit, and the rest of his game sort of went south in the same way. Maybe there's something amiss in his life as well that we don't know, that we're not aware of. I hope it's just a slump in form, but we all know what the cliche is. Class is permanent, form is temporary, class is permanent. So I think Pollard will be back, and Rassie will have a way of getting him back. I think perhaps more the type of game that Rassie wants to play, and he needed to have somebody practice. And that's why when he said Mani has been with him a week longer, it's because Mani had a week longer to practice this specific style of play. And we know what that means. Rassie wants to run a bit more. That's why I said to you earlier, Rassie he always drops hints, and you're going to sometimes read between the lines. And for me, the indication is they can say what they like about us. Rassie's going to run at them. There's Ellis Park, they're going to be blowing after 20 minutes, and then we'll see who's old and slow.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned altitude. Let's talk about England for a bit. We just saw that the England SSC coach made them practice with masks to simulate playing at altitude. Now, I suppose that's one way of doing it, but when Malcolm Morris runs over you, you forget about all altitude and everything else. Do you think there's any merit to that kind of a thing? Or is it, are they overhyping it maybe?
Yeah, people try and find different ways. I've still puzzled that people don't just do the basics. Go train at altitude for a week. It's been proven. You got to give yourself 7 to 8 days. So in England, maybe they wanted to have their players from the final. That might still come back to bite them because those guys didn't have much recovery time. So what when he names his team, I'd be interested to see how many of the Saints guys actually make the cut. Will they be able to cope with altitude after such a big game? You can do all the science you want, and we've seen that people have tried flying on the day before. We've been trying this since the 80s, 70s, and the 80s here in South Africa, flying from Cape Town to Pretoria, or flying from Durban to Pretoria, trying all sorts of things to Joburg. And the reality is just, both teams are going to play at Ellis Park, and both teams are going to, yes, the Springboks have been training there, so they will have an advantage in that regard. But wearing masks, I don't know if there's any scientific evidence that that's going to help them play at altitude.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the team. Like you just mentioned, Saints won the title, second time in 3 years. Last year, of course, Bath won it. But that should be theoretically quite a strong team, settled team, used to playing with each other. Cohesion is going to be quite good. But most importantly, that means Henry Pollard will probably be in the team. And I mean, like you just mentioned, you said something about Dwayne Vermeulen. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't be surprised if Rassie on Friday comes with a sudden change, and Dwayne Vermeulen's on the bench. He's been asking for 10 minutes in a game with Pollard. Yeah, so I think, in all seriousness, the important thing is he's a good player. Does his mannerism irritate people? Yes, I don't think it, but I'm old school. So, this is a modern game. You want primary school kids to be interested in the game. You got to have characters. We always said characters. I mean, we come from the 70s, 60s, 70s, and we had some serious characters. So do we? I don't think there's a problem with him as a player, and I think if you start focusing on his mannerisms, he succeeded. He's already beaten you because you're taking it away from your game and you're taking it away from his game. So ignore what he does and ignore his mannerisms and focus on what you're supposed to do on the field, and that's beat England.
Yeah, last week Rossi said that Pollock and Sasha are pretty much the same in terms of the hype. They get a lot of hype, and but I think there is still a distinction. Just to continue on the Pollock theme for a little bit, I think Sasha sort of tolerates the hype. I don't think Sasha courts it. Sasha doesn't want to be the superstar and getting all the attention. Maybe a little bit, but not. It's not a limelight hogger, call it that. I think Pollock wants it. Pollock loves it. Pollock wants to attract it. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, I'm just saying this. That's why the difference when you start shouting at the crowd and that kind of thing. There's a bit of a method to that madness, I suppose. But if you want to get the South African crowd riled up, start doing it at Ellis Park. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, he might. I don't think he's ever played at Ellis Park, so he might be in for a surprise. Although we're going to have a very empty Ellis Park, so that might scare them even more. The fact that there's nobody, they're going to be waiting for where all these guys are that's waiting for them, because they're not going to arrive.
Well, if South Africans are too scared to go to Ellis Park, what's waiting for them outside? You never know. Well, it's not about being scared.
We know what that place looks like. We've been there often enough, and the way it's declining. I mean, it's a horror show. You barely can drive on the highway now. If you dodge all the roadworks trying to get to Ellis Park, you've got two ways in and out. And either way, once you get off the highway, that last kilometer or so is you run the risk of a hijacking. Whatever Saru says and stuff, it has an impact. The area has an impact. The ticket price has an impact. I know you didn't ask me about that, but there's a reason why they're struggling to sell. They've only sold about 30,000. They've got more than 35,000 tickets. Yesterday I looked, they still got about 35,000 tickets. The only tickets that was sold is the cheap seats. So the 450 rand seats. From now on, if you want to buy a ticket, you're going to pay a minimum of 950 rand for your seat. So you're going to have a lot of English guys. It won't be surprised me if there's more England shirts in this crowd than South African shirts, because suddenly it's less than £100 for them. It's cheap seats for them. £50 for a ticket.
Just as we were talking, WhatsApp popped out on my phone. Something that I knew before, but I wasn't allowed to talk about. But Elrich Louw has now been confirmed to have been called up to the Springbok squad. So there we go. Willem Strauss just sent out the WhatsApp. So now I can say it. Thank you, Willem. Perfect time.
So it's confirmed. Yes,
Yeah.
I remember you mentioning it to me. Yeah, I think that might have something to do with Franco Mostard's injury, because Rassie said in his press conference, Franco Mostard is 2 to 3 weeks. 2 to 3 weeks means he's not going to play in the Nations Championship. So I think it's got to do more utility forward, and maybe that's your answer for the next game. You got another utility forward, and you got Luet is maybe back next week, potentially. So I think that just explains that Rassie is covering for Franco.
Yeah. Well, Riley Norton is also out. I mean, he was supposed to make his debut this weekend, and sadly got injured. I think the second last practice or something, or movement of the day. Quite a severe injury, hamstring tear, I think. So that's bad news.
Yeah, grade 3 hamstring tear. So that's months. It's not weeks.
Yeah, and it's interesting what Rassie said about the youngsters bringing a different energy and the dynamism to the practice. I mean, I seem to be more energetic and the likes, and putting the old guys, the old and slow guard, along with them.
Yeah, I think maybe it happens. You try and get a bit too enthusiastic. He had a really good game for the Barbers. He showed that and he has bulked up a bit, and he showed that he belongs there. So maybe Rassie should have reined him in. I know there's speculation that he would have started. Whether Rassie would have followed through on that, who knows? But the reality is that Riley is now out. It's sad for him, but he's young enough to recover, and he'll be back. Maybe for the year-end trip to the UK. I just think young players like that, when you see they get a bit over enthusiastic, maybe rein them in a bit and say to them, "Listen, you're in the picture. Don't go and injure yourself." I remember James Dalton, the famous thing before the test. He went and ran on a treadmill. I don't know if somebody whispered in his ear that conditioning needs a bit of upgrade. He went and ran on a treadmill and pulled a muscle and was out for a few months. So it happens sometimes. Players, for whatever reason, gets a bit over enthusiastic and suddenly do 10 extra sprints or 2 extra sprints, and it's that extra sprints that usually do the damage. So yeah, I do feel sorry for him, but he'll be back.
I got us a bit sidetracked there with WhatsApp popping up on my feed while we were talking. So let's get back to England quickly. England had a horrific Six Nations. I mean, there were Six Nations since it became the Six Nations, 2001, I think. Ended fifth, only ended ahead of Wales, who was even worse. And you just mentioned Wales early on in this conversation. England's under pressure here. Steve Borthwick's under pressure. He got his contract confirmed, but apparently it was quite a vigorous examination that he was subjected to. England can't really afford to let this one slip, yet they can't really be the favourites either. What are you expecting from this England side?
If you look at the squad in general, I think they will be competitive. Like I said earlier, I think they'll be more competitive than we think. They will be a strong team. I just don't think they're going to last the pace. I think that last 20 minutes, if you look at what we bring off the bench, they can say, and again, they can say we're old and slow. But we bring off the bench, which they don't have. That depth that we bring off the bench, Jan Hendrik, Gerard Steenekamp, Zachary Porten, Marco van Staden, Cameron Hanekom, then in the back line, Kobus Reinach, Andre Esterhuizen, and Kienan Moody. Now, bar perhaps 2 of those players, those could be starters, genuine starters, So our bench will not weaken, or in fact, we will be able to upkeep the tempo. So if the forward seems to struggle a bit, Rassie won't hesitate to put Andre Esterhuizen on the flank. If let's say for argument's sake, Pieter-Steph has to go to lock and Sia is struggling a bit, Rassie won't hesitate to put Andre Esterhuizen on the flank. He's done it before and he'll do it again. So to get back to your question about England, I think they'll be competitive. I think it's a good squad. I don't think they're a bad team. I just think there's something missing in the camp. So maybe leaving Maro Itoje out to rest. They're resting Maro Itoje. I think maybe that says more about the issues, internal issues, than actually the type of player they have. So let's see on Saturday if they look like a team or if there is. Because remember, they've also got. So you've got Pollock, you've got these characters, and then you've got some of the older players, and I don't think they take kindly to these youngsters. So Borthwick wants some new blood. He wants some freshness. He wants different dynamics in his team. And maybe leaving Maro Itoje at home will bring the dynamics of the team, will change the dynamics of the team, and it'll be a more settled, and the team will be more gelled. There won't be that internal strife. They won't have the old guys won't be so mad about Pollock doing all his poses.
Yeah. You seem to be a bit cynical or skeptical of that Maro Itoje staying at home, but yeah, that's a story for another day. Just lastly, we keep talking about Rassie's, master plan and chess moves and everything else. And an important thing that happened is he recruited Joe Lewis, England's former lead analyst, who was with England for 9 years. Is he going to be involved in this game already? Obviously, that's going to be a huge advantage to the Springboks.
Well, an analyst like that doesn't necessarily have to be at the team or with the team. In the modern era, I mean, you're sitting in Pretoria, I'm sitting in Cape Town. I don't know if you've arrived in Cape Town yet. You're only here tomorrow, but only tomorrow. Okay. So you're sitting in Pretoria, I'm sitting in Cape Town, and we can talk, So nothing stops Rassie and this guy from talking like this and analyzing. And he can do, with the technology, and all you do is you have your graphics and your explanations and your videos ready, and you play it for Rassie, and then you send him the whole file. And they've got an internal exchange or storage cloud facility where they share all these things, and the players have access to that. So that sort of analysis doesn't necessarily, the guy doesn't have to be, to analyze England and to give you some advice and stuff, or analyze your training sessions. Rassie can upload a training session for him or a certain move for him, and he can analyze and say, no, perhaps this is. So that sort of, I don't think, will he be involved? Maybe he's involved already. Who knows?
Well, that's my question. Is he actually part of the team already? Isn't there a bit of a gardening leave or restraint of trade or something? Or is he available? Is he now part of the Springbok squad or coaching team or coaching staff? No matter where he sits in the world, the point is he allowed to to assist the Springboks yet, or not. Or I'm just
That
thinking,
was
if I
never
was
made
England,
clear. I suppose
yeah,
that we have to ask that question from Sorry, or maybe the Springbok team management, not team management, maybe their media department, and say, listen, is he with the box already?
yeah. Just lastly, the referee, James Dolman, New Zealander. As far as I remember, not the one that we would have preferred. Let's call it that.
Yeah, I've maybe I'm mature and maybe I'm getting old, but yes, I do get frustrated with some calls, but I'm more of the view that you take the referee out of the game by doing well. I mean, if your discipline is good, and I'm not talking about slapping a ball away or tackling a guy high or that sort of discipline. I'm talking about staying in the system. Making sure that when you've got the ball, you keep the ball. Stay in your position, stay in the game, understand where you're supposed to be. That type of discipline is, if that's good enough, you're not going to find a guy that needs to suddenly clean out a ruck and run a few seconds late and then dive over the ruck and give a penalty away. That you need to be disciplined in staying in the system, staying in the moment. So yeah, that's how you take the referee out of the game. Just don't make mistakes. Don't give the referee the opportunity to come into the game and blow you.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. All right. Lastly, you mentioned to me just before we went on air, the EPCR, the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup. They've changed the rules slightly, and I'm a little confused as to why they would do that. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So India, that's the EPCR has decided they want to make it a bit more exciting. They felt that, and it happened to the Sharks. So maybe as an explainer, it happened to the Sharks last year. They won 2 games, but a team that won only 1 game overtook them on the standings, and they got knocked out of the playoffs, and thus, they didn't make the playoffs, they didn't make the cut. So the reality is that they want to avoid that. Teams can lose by plenty of points, but still score 4 tries. So they've changed it. The important thing is they changed it to 3 tries or more than the opposition. So that's a thing that we've used in Super Rugby and in Sanzar quite a bit. So that's a big change. So what they're doing is that they're also gone to the 3 highest clubs ranked in each pool will automatically qualify. So that's a big thing, is that only 3 qualify, and that gives you 12, and then the rest of the 16 places, the next 4 places go to the highest ranked teams overall. So you avoid that artificial bonus point scenario, dropping somebody out. And then obviously the Challenge Cup round of 16 will be awarded to the next 4 clubs. So you've got 12 teams, 3 from each pool, and then you've got another 4 teams. So you get to your 16 teams. The next 4 teams, 17, 18, 19, and 20, they drop down to the Challenge Cup.
So that means
that's the gist of the main. There's other things. Mbia, what I can share with you, I sat in a media briefing with the EPCR CEO last week, and there weren't too many journalists on the group. For some other reason, they decided. So I asked him a specific question. There was this big brouhaha about South Africa want to leave the European Cup and the Challenge Cup. It is absolute unadulterated nonsense. South African teams, and I can confirm this, has been signed in those competitions till 2030. They are full time. We're going nowhere. The South African teams are going nowhere. So that the person, I won't mention his name, but the person who ran with the story claimed he had inside info. The fact is, whatever his source is, and his source might be legit, his source was wrong, and he was wrong. It's more likely that South Africa will tell New Zealand and Australia, move the Rugby Championship to the February-March window, or we're going to be out, because we have to find a proper off-season. So the Rugby Championship, as we know, after the July window, then now this year it's the greatest rivalry, but the Rugby Championship is sitting in that window, and we need to find a 2-month window for our players to rest, a proper off-season. And that is where the problem lies. And New Zealand and Australia don't want to move. And Saru is starting to get a bit edgy. And the more likely event is that if push comes to shove, It's the Rugby Championship that will fall, not that we will pull out of that, not the European Cup. And there's too much money for us in European Cup. There's no real money for us to go back to the Southern Hemisphere. We're providing all the television money. We provide all the bums on seats. So why would you go back to giving our money to Australia? Because remember, we supported them for so long. They've got everybody got an equal share. 33% of the TV revenue, 33% of all this marketing and sponsorship revenue. When we were bringing on the bulk, we were bringing as much as 60% of that revenue in. So we now said to them, or we will likely say to them, listen, you don't offer me much in terms of money. If you don't move your window, or the Rugby Champs window, we will have to consider, just like we did with, and then New Zealand threw their toys out the cot and chased us away, and they're now regretting it. They're now regretting that we're not in Super Rugby, because Super Rugby is, they're folding, they're down to a 10-team tournament simply because they can't afford it. You can't keep, it's like we did with Japan with the Sunwolves, somebody has to, they don't get the money, they don't have, the clubs are not interested in supporting a makeshift team like that. So the same with Super Rugby, they've just lost 2 teams, and they've already lost in Australia. They lost Melbourne Rebels, and now they've lost the Pacifica team. So yeah, it's that tournament has sadly run its race, and they must find something else, something different. Their best bet would be, but it's unlikely to happen, is to get a couple of South African teams in there to spark interest again. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, interesting. If we withdraw from the Rugby Championship, that means the Springboks are not going to be playing in the Rugby Championship. So where are they going to be playing? Are they just not going to be playing?
They're going to have a rest. They're going to break, because then they can.
Do you know how much money that will cost SA Rugby if the Springboks don't play? Or play, the Springboks will have to play somewhere else. That's what my thinking is.
Well, they can play at Twickenham. They can have a series of games at Twickenham, because they're always popular at Twickenham. Twickenham sells, I think the last one where the Springboks played, they sold 60,000 seats. So, in pounds, that's quite a handy cash handout. So I'm sure it's not going to be as easy as I make it sound like. We're just going to walk away. There'll be a lot of talking, but the most likely option is the Rugby Champs. What will follow from that, how they will fill that gap, that's all the discussions. And Mark Alexander, in that press conference when this thing took a sharp left turn and completely veered off the rails, Mark Alexander made it clear that in July they will be asking some hard questions and making some tough calls. And that's one of the things, that's where those discussions will take place. They are going to take place. And, how do we create that rest period? Because we have to create that rest period, because already now the Bulls are without their Springboks, 10 of them that 2 is left. So 10 of their Springboks are not with them till December. And we've discussed this before. So the franchises also need to find a way to get value out of those players. To only have your Springboks, half your starting team for only from December, and then lose them in February and March because they need to take a break, a compulsory 8-week break. So SARU has to find a solution. And there's no money. Yes, there is money, but it's not nearly as much. So remember, we're now a partner in the EPCR, and we're a partner in the URC. So there's good money for South Africans. So African rugby is making good money there.
No, I agree with you. I think EPCR is the future. I'm just wondering where the Springboks will go, because this is, at the end of the day, the golden goose, the one that lays the golden eggs. That's going to be an interesting development, I think.
Yeah, there's been talk, although I'm not sure it will ever happen. But there's been talk that the Springboks can go and add another team to the Six Nations or something like that. Whether that will ever materialize, I'm not sure. But there are options, and there's things that people talk about. So, we can speculate all we like, but there's behind the scenes in the boardrooms, those conversations are ongoing.
Okay, Jan, thank you so much. Let me get this one out with Eldrigelo breaking news. I'm quite happy about that. Thank you, Willem Strauss. I was itching to say something, but I couldn't. But now I can. So yeah, I got my Eldrigelo itch scratched. Thank you, Jan. Have a good one. Say hi to Loffie for me. next week
I
again.
will do. MV, have a lovely day.